in shaping the development of international law, and more importantly, that the development is shaped in the direction that takes into account the interests of our member states. In closing, my delegation would like to commend the work of both the ALCO and the ILC on these topics. Comments on specific issues have been requested with regard to ILC in particular. This delegation believes that the expertise and experience shared in this August Assembly would provide ILC with valuable inputs for further deliberation. Sessions such as this is of great significance in the maintenance of the ILC and ALCO long-standing and mutually beneficial relationship. And we find that statement made here most constructive and thought-provoking. Perhaps we may need to reschedule the annual session of ALCO to precede the session of ILC to allow ILC to consider our input during its same year session. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Thailand. And I'll give the floor now to South Africa.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, allow me to express our gratitude for ALCO for preparing the reports on matters relating to the ILC works. Secondly, allow me also to extend our gratitude to the excellent deliberation and explanation by the panelists on the ILC works. In regard to the first paper, that is a formation and evidence of customary international law, Malaysia acknowledged the role and importance of customary international law and views that customary international law should be accorded with the same recognition by the whole of the international community. Although customary international law is recognized as a source of law, views as to what constitutes customary international law are manifestly disseminated and deeply deliberated upon. Hence, Malaysia agrees with the Secretariat that in-depth study should be conducted in relation to determine the formation and evidence of customary international law by taking into consideration views from different states. In relation to the issues highlighted by ALCO at the Commission's 65th session, Malaysia supports that notion that analysis of the 10 questions posted is of crucial importance and that it will further shed some light on the core study of customary international law. Additionally, Malaysia recommends that other related issues which the International Law Commission could take into consideration in the formulation of this study, namely, first, customary international law for a group of states or at regional level, its existence and requirements for formation and evidence. Second, persistent objection, density before and after the formation of customary international law. And thirdly, evidence of customary international law, whether a piece of evidence can be used to prove both the subjective and objective element of customary international law. Malaysia also notes the two draft conclusions in the first report of the Special Rapporteur relating to the scope and use of the term customary international law. In regard to the scope, Malaysia is agreeable to the proposal and emphasize that the draft conclusion should be reflective of state practices from all the principal legal systems of the world and from all regions. Further, the conclusion should be practical and able to give guidance not only to international tribunals or practitioners, but also to domestic court and judges. In terms of the proposed term customary international law, for the purpose of other terms, Malaysia reiterates that the Commission takes into consideration the widest possible state practices and their approaches relating to the relevant terminology or definition before a common understanding could be reached. In conclusion, for this paper, Malaysia supports the call for member states to submit material and state practice to the Commission to ensure that the outcome of the study will reflect all perspectives, including that of the developing countries. In relation to the immunity of state officials from foreign criminal jurisdiction, Malaysia has been studying and closely following the development of the subject since the inclusion of the topic at the Commission 58 session in 2006. At the 6th Committee of the 63rd session of the UN Assembly, Malaysia made intervention as regard to its stance on the preliminary report prepared by the previous Special Rapporteur. In this regard, Malaysia would like to reiterate its position that the topic should focus on the immunity accorded under international law, in particular customary international law and not under domestic law. In regard to the proposed draft article, Malaysia notes that the draft Article 1 and 2 deal with the scope of the topic and the draft articles. Malaysia fully supports the establishment of such parameter as it would set clear from the outset the scope of the topic. On draft Article 1, Malaysia would like to raise the issue on the usage of the word certain state officials, as it raised questions as to who are these officials that enjoy immunity. On this note, Malaysia is of the view that all state officials should be covered under the definition. A related consideration would be whether state officials who are employed on a contract basis would be covered under such definition when they undertake the function of state official. In regard to draft Article 2, Malaysia is of the view that any other immunity granted unilaterally by a state to the official of another state, especially while they are in the territory, should also be excluded from the discussion. As regard to Article 4, Malaysia is of the view that the categories of persons considered as head of state and heads of government should also be defined. Malaysia would suggest that the definition should include sovereign rulers who act as head of state, as what has been practiced in Malaysia, in addition to the head of the government such as the Prime Minister or President. In terms of draft Article 5, Malaysia notes that it covers the type of action done prior to, I stress the word prior to, and during the terms of office. Based on draft Article 6, it's clear that this immunity applies only while the head of state, head of government, or minister for foreign affairs hold office. Hence, Malaysia would like to seek clarification on the intention of the proposed term prior to, as the said term seems to contradict the temporal scope of immunity rationale personnel, which only begins when the said official takes office. Similarly, Malaysia also note that subparagraph B of draft Article 6 iterates the intention to highlight the limitation to the enjoyment of immunity rationale personnel in subparagraph A of draft Article 5. Malaysia queries the usage of the term may in subparagraph B of Article 6, as such usage seems to indicate that the enjoyment of immunity rational personnel is dependent upon other conditions. In regard to the last paper, protection of person in the event of disaster, Malaysia pleased to put on record that the observation in relation to this draft article are preliminary in nature. In regard to Article 5, which made mandatory for states to cooperate with the United Nations and other competent intergovernmental organizations, this cooperation, read together with the measures of implementation stated in draft Article 16 and draft Article 5 ter, may lead to the sovereign rights of the state being usurped by any supra-international body. Malaysia also finds that draft Article 16, coming out from the drafting committee, in particular paragraph 1 of draft Article 16, the proposed draft by Special Rapporteur is preferred. Malaysia maintains that any measure to be undertaken by a state to reduce the risk of disaster should be within its full capabilities and having regard to the principle of state sovereignty under public international law. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Malaysia. I think South Africa had also requested for the floor. I'll give the floor now to South Africa.
Thank you, Madam President. Our comment, in addition to the topics of today, was to make a statement on the obligation to extradite, prosecute, and mutual legal assistance. I'm not sure whether am I allowed, since that topic is the work of the ILC. Thank you. South Africa occupies a strategic position in the world when it comes to international law enforcement cooperation. It is clear that South Africa, by virtue of its position in Southern Africa, the whole world, is an important player in combating transitional crime. Madam President, South Africa, being a state party to the UN Convention Against Transitional Crime, UNTOC, the Protocol Against Trafficking in Arms, Trafficking in Persons, and Smuggling of Migrants, has obligations to assist regarding cooperation in the fight against crime and corruption, extradition of suspects, and the obtaining of evidence. Furthermore, with its membership to suspects and the obtaining of evidence, furthermore, with its membership to Interpol, the South African Regional Police Chiefs Cooperation Organization, and its formal police-to-police cooperation agreements, South Africa is able to comply with the majority of requests for international cooperation. Madam Chair, regarding mutual legal assistance, the Director General of the Department of Justice is the central authority for all matters pertaining to mutual legal assistance and extradition within South Africa. Requests for mutual legal assistance are therefore directed to the Office of the Director General in the Department of Justice for processing according to the relevant provisions in the ICMA or the relevant treaty or convention consent. With respect to mutual legal assistance, South Africa adopts a flexible approach in dealing with requests and is able to render a wide range of mutual legal assistance under the ICMA. South Africa is able to render assistance regardless of a treaty or agreement. There is also no requirement for dual criminality or where the request is to obtain evidence. There is no requirement that judicial proceedings should be should have been instituted before assistance can be rendered. Madam Chair, with respect to South Africa's extradition